Welcome to Keeping Score. I'm Rick Horrow. Each week we bring you insights from the playmakers, deal makers, and rule makers in the world of sports. I'll give you my take on some of the items of the week using my 30 years of experience doing deals for teams, leagues, and players in the $750 billion business of sports. Plus, we'll talk with a central figure in the sports world. The views expressed in this podcast are my own and do not represent the views of Reuters. Let's get started. Rick Horrow with you again with this week's Keeping Score. Dan Colarusso, the executive editor of Reuters, and I always talk off air about stuff, and we thought that this might be interesting today to take the stuff public. Right off the top, the state of North Carolina has got itself into some hot water. The NCAA has decided to take not just the March Madness events and rounds next year, but 7 events as far as all venues of North Carolina, soccer, tennis, lacrosse, baseball, and take them out of North Carolina basically because of the bathroom bill. And they're losing a heck of a lot of business, and the NCAA's decided to flex its muscles in an area they haven't flexed their muscles before. What say you?
I think it's really interesting. I mean, I think we're in a 1960s kind of moment now, right? And this goes beyond like a Colin Kaepernick thing. This goes beyond any of that. And it's actually an organization saying to North Carolina, these games, these sports that are very, very important to you aren't going to be in your state. And when you look at North Carolina and college basketball, it's one of the stops on the Stations of the Cross for the NCAA, right? And now it's just not going to be part of it. So you have to think there's revenue pressure on the legislators there. It just strikes me as really socially interesting, and the possibility of having some staying power and really actually moving the needle some way.
You know, the Republican Party spokeswoman, Kemi Mueller, said it's so absurd it's almost comical. But when you consider the All-Star game that's leaving, the Final Four, 2 early March Madness rounds and everything else, it may be up to $400 million in 2017. And by the way, if they don't change it around, it could be more the year after that. So socially, yeah, but economically, big time, right?
If $400 million is comical, what is she going to take seriously?
Yeah. Well, it's not just sports, but it's industry relocation. So they've got a big issue and a few revenue interesting issues. University of Tennessee beat Virginia Tech last week in a football game. Yeah, a football game in a facility where they had 156,990 people. Battle of Bristol's actual attendance. They turned Bristol Motor Speedway into a football stadium. Revenue's pretty significant. Maybe doing it in the future. They've got a second game this week with not so big a matchup. But the bottom line is the numbers are pretty significant, right?
The numbers are significant, and it's another piece, I think, in the trend we see a lot around sports where teams, organizations, colleges are trying to squeeze more revenue out of these events. They realize their only currency, and their strong currency, is that they are live and they are an event you don't want to miss and has value in person. They're not going to get much more out of TV contracts. They're not going to sell any more tickets. So this is where a lot of franchises are to start to say, okay, what else can we monetize? How can we make things we do already into revenue-generating possibilities?
On the branding side of the world, Liberty Media is set to acquire Formula One for $4.4 billion in a cash and stock deal, replacing the chairman, replacing the leadership. What is a media company doing with a Formula One racing company that in essence does most of its work across the pond? What's that all about?
You tell me, but to me it seems like a big media company is locking in inventory for the next decade, right? I mean, you look at the globalization of sports. I think you did a show on it a while back about rugby coming to the U.S. You know, sports is getting even more global than it had been. Formula One has to grow, and Malone has to make sure that he has assets, again, must-see live events that can capture a large audience and an affluent audience. It's a great, great play. It's better than any of the U.S. soccer plays I've seen. It's better than rugby. It's better than, cricket expansion. I think it's a really, really solid move because there's huge brands attached to it already.
Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari, good examples.
The rights to the big 4 sports in the States outside of hockey are already so extortionately expensive that, when companies look around, they have to find, value stocks, for lack of a better, perspective. And that's, I think, what Formula One could be.
Here's another value stock. NBA has a 3-year trial period of allowing teams to sign sponsors for jersey patches, and the Philadelphia 76ers did a deal with StubHub initially. Now every other team looks like they want to follow suit. The Timberwolves say they may go outside the U.S. They have a minority partner who is a marketing guru in China. and we may see a Chinese brand on jersey patches on NBA basketball players before the next season starts. What do you think of that?
I think that is. I think it's a recipe for great controversy. I think when you look at this, I think the conversation you and I had via email about this, like when is some kind of global political problem going to bubble up and leave Minnesota fans who might be feeling patriotic boycotting games? When does a police union boycott games? When do military veterans boycott games? That becomes an issue as you get global in the United States because people are not used to this. It strikes me as maybe a minefield. I mean, great short-term revenue, but we'll see how things develop. How does it show up if, a Middle Eastern company that doesn't have a great human rights record ends up on the jersey of the New York Knicks? That's to be seen, and I think that's really kind of a fascinating topic.
Let's kind of set up our guest, Jay Perry, the WNBA Chief Operating Officer, but she has a lot of experience in women's sports, Olympics. What are the kind of biggest issues from your perspective on women's sports sponsorships, women's sports parity, corporate sports for women, et cetera, et cetera?
Look, I think the alternative media universe, the ability for players, athletes, activists to go right to an audience via social media, any of the new ways they can get there, makes it very easy to start a cause. And I think female athletes in the U.S. Have driven a niche following into something bigger. And, the economies of it has yet to follow, right? I mean, you tell me, the WNBA financially, I remember when the WNBA started, Rebecca Lobo and Teresa Witherspoon were the big Liberty players back then. And it was fun to watch, but it never really captured the imagination of the city in a way that made it really a cash cow, I don't believe at least. And to the players, that becomes an issue because they need to make a living and they see themselves not being paid the same way. So the best female basketball players in the world, at least the best Americans, go and play in Russia, right?
Yeah, well, and they play in the WNBA because it is a balance sheet that includes NBA owners and NBA arenas. But at the end of the day, the better basketball may be played abroad, although we keep winning the gold medals, which is one of the things that Jay Perry says as well. And the big issue to me is the Women's World Cup, for example, when America wins. Is it a one-off because we're excited about a major event, or can we support this stuff every week? And I guess only time will tell. And the real key maybe is corporate sponsorship. But if there's a way where women's sports can trigger women's interest and women's sponsorship, they've got a pretty good recipe, huh?
Right. Media companies spend a lot of money and have been spending a lot of money in the past 15 years, just from my own experience in this business, trying to attract women readers, women viewers. There are entire industries and corporate campaigns built around it. Wall Street, you see, has a particular push toward women and investing. Like, when that jumps into the venue of female athletics, I think you have viability. But what do we sacrifice? What's the attrition in the time it takes to get that money in? And that's the thing. You lose great athletes and you lose great identity. We've had World Cup momentum, and I don't see women's soccer in the United States being a driver of a huge economy yet. What's it going to take to get it there? Is it more the corporate side, or do they have to get better, get more exciting? Does the game have to change? It seems pretty exciting to me. I enjoy it, but that's one man's opinion.
One man's opinion, but the man happens to be the executive editor of Reuters, and we'll do this again. Thanks, Dan.
Terrific. Thanks a lot.
Jay Perry, a WNBA Chief Operating Officer, 20-year WNBA anniversary, pretty diverse, 17-year career with Bank of America. She then went to the Phoenix Mercury, the Phoenix Suns. She headed Arizona's successful Super Bowl quest, and now joining the WNBA. She's got a lot to say. Jay Perry.
The WNBA celebrating its 20th anniversary, and Jay Perry, WNBA Chief Operating Officer, named that in April after a stint as the head of the Super Bowl host committee in Arizona, the Phoenix Mercury, Bank of America. If we went from beginning to end on the resume, we wouldn't have any time for the interview. So let me just say hi, Jay.
Hi, Rick. Thanks for having us on the show.
When you take a look at the way the women played in Rio, obviously very happy with the results, and it's kind of proof of concept, isn't it?
You know, it really is. Basketball has become so, I think, played, respected. I think there's a lot of interest in it in our country right now. And when we look at what our 12 female athletes did on the court in Rio, I mean, to me, it's just an amazing level of play, an amazing level of camaraderie. Obviously, they are fiercely competitive, but they've got the goods to back it up, right? There's just nobody better in the world than them. And we've got fans around the country that can come and watch these superstars play, see them up close and personal. It's great family entertainment. So we think it's a recipe for success for the WNBA for sure.
You've got the Minnesota Lynx that can probably take on the world very successfully in basketball, don't you think?
Right, exactly. With the 4 Olympians on the U.S. team, they do have a lot to offer. They're the champions from 2015. But I have to say, several teams are giving them a run for their money going into the playoffs. We changed our playoffs format this year. And so with our 12 teams, 8 with the best record will move on to the playoffs. So it doesn't matter if you're in the Eastern Conference or the Western Conference, it's those with the best record. So the fans are really excited to have the gals come back from the Olympics, to come back from break, and to be able to cheer their teams on to, again, get into the playoffs.
Women's sports generally obviously buttressed by the stability of the WNBA and its 20th anniversary. Give me your perspective of the business of women's sports. You've seen a lot of it from a lot of different sides. How much better and more stable and growing is it today than it was before, and how much more is left to do, I guess you could say?
Yeah, sure. Well, women's sports in general has certainly come a long way, whether it's basketball or soccer or tennis. What I can say about the WNBA is, as we are in our 20th season, I mean, everything that's gotten us to this point has truly been amazing. But what's great to see, and as you said, I rejoined the league in April, is that the level of play has never been better. And so even when we look at scoring records this year versus last year, we are already 7 points per game over where we were last year, and we average about 82 points per game this year. So I think that there's interest in women's sports, but frankly, there's still an opportunity to introduce more fans to it. A lot of our NBA players and other athletes are so impressed with the women's game because it's based on really solid fundamentals, but they just play it at the very highest level. So our goal with the promotion coming out of the Olympics, the WNBA Super 20, is to really increase interest in the WNBA and get more folks to come out and try out a game, because there's really nothing like it. It's great entertainment.
Well, and that's really the key. I guess it could be a giant catch-22. Attendance is great. You could always increase it. How important is the NBA's management structure synergistically in helping spread the word and help get more fans out than ever before?
Well, definitely being a part of the NBA family is great for the WNBA, since we are only 20 years old. So in a way, right, we're about to graduate from college, hopefully, at 20 years old. But it's great because there's just a belief in basketball being really an international game. It's a global game. And so having the resources of the NBA and having them be supportive of us growing the league, it's tremendous. But it really boils down to our 12 teams and what's going on in those markets. And what we're seeing this year so far is that all of our business metrics are up. So attendance is up, our TV ratings are up, merchandise sales, and I have to tell you, digital consumption is off the charts. We've seen a 5-fold increase in our social media engagement just this year. So my belief is, the interest is there, and as soon as we get fans to come to a game, in a way they get hooked. And that's what happened with me when I started working in the WNBA in 2004. It's just a product that has amazing players, amazing talent, and the fans are really fun too. So it's kind of a unique property.
Female fans, female purchasers make 57% of the buying decisions, I saw in a recent survey. How do you turn that into long-term corporate stability and corporate partnership on a grand scale?
Right. Yeah, great point. Definitely women have as you said, discretionary income. They're making those discretionary purchase decisions. And so we have a great partnership with ESPN, which is so important to us. They tell our stories day in and day out about the WNBA 365 days a year. Great partnership with Verizon, great partnership with Adidas. So I think it's taking those brands and really opening up the dialogue with new companies and new corporations. And that's certainly part of our focus, because what we've seen is that partners that become a part of the WNBA family, they get really committed, they see return on investment, and as soon as they get introduced to our players and the passion of our fans, that's where they see the return on their investment. So for us, I think it's having more conversations and getting more introductions. We're definitely seeing momentum shift with the WNBA this season, and then also with all the play around the Olympics. So we're excited about what's to come and really the future of the WNBA and how we can, to your point, really accelerate the growth. And I think that's possible.
Is it a superstar-driven league long-term, or is it more women playing high-quality basketball, or is it a little bit of both? As the Diana Taurasi's and others close down their brilliant careers, what does the future on the court look like?
Yeah. It's a combination of both, because we have to have the level of play, and just what we've seen these past few years, it's going to continue to improve. And if you haven't been to a game, Rick, I have to get you out because I know it would blow your socks off. But then it's also getting to know the players really, individually, understanding their stories. I mean, that's what connects the fans to players and teams, as you know, no matter what league you're talking about. So the more that we can, as you said, get Diana Taurasi in front of fans and sponsors. Maya Moore is an amazing talent on Minnesota. I mean, the list goes on and on. The draft class that came out this year has really, hit the court, and they are already delivering. If you look at Breanna Stewart in Seattle and what she contributed to the Olympic team. So there's so much talent and just so many great personalities that the more we can tell those stories, I think the more success we'll have.
You are absolutely taking me to a game. Jay Perry, Chief Executive, Chief Operating Officer, WNBA.
Thanks for listening to this edition of Keeping Score. I'm Rick Horrow. The producer of the show, Alex Cohen. Associate producer, Bethel Habte. Assistance provided by Tanner Simpkins and Carla Swadek. And the executive editor of Reuters Digital, Dan Colarusso.